Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oops, I got the volume turned down. There we go. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
All right.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Well, we're live. We're recording. We're minus David.
Well, I think David will sign on just as soon as he can, but did encourage us to go ahead and get started with the conversation.
Otherwise, we got a finance committee meeting.
Good. Okay, so you've confirmed that we're live and recording.
Yes, sir.
Good. Do we have media present? Do you know, Andrew?
No, we do not.
Well,
I believe Mike has been simply watching the recording or watching live rather than signing on to the meeting.
yeah. Well, but they have been noticed correctly.
Yes.
Okay. Good, then we can go ahead and call our meeting to order. Connie, I guess you are the member of the Finance Committee.
I guess so.
Would you like to run this meeting?
Actually, let's just all run it. I think let's start with Stacy with the financial update. Want to?
Yes. If we would like to start with Parks and Rec, I will share my screen if Andrew will allow that, and I'll pull up the report that Kimberly shared with us.
Screen ability.
Okay.
I thought Kimberly Rice provided really good data.
Yes, she did. I agree, Tom.
And the way she presented it, I think makes it pretty easy, well, visually easy to understand, Stacy, but why don't you walk us through it?
Yes. Obviously, if anyone has any specific questions or wants the detail behind it, we have Kimberly on standby. We can pull her in if we need it. But I believe that she has mainly focused on revenues. Obviously, that's we know that when they prepared their budget, they reviewed it with Andrew and myself. Andrew and I actually encouraged Kimberly to go back and take a harder look at her revenues because we felt some of her projections maybe were a little too optimistic in light of everything. So even more so than the city, Parks and Rec has been hit financially with the pandemic. In addition to the pandemic, obviously, we also had a new gym, Planet Fitness, come into town, which has, I think, affected the pavilion's membership a little bit. So as you can see on the screen, her post-COVID Q3 financial report, she has provided us information providing March to June and then July to September for 18, 19, and 20. So we can see what a normal year had looked like for Parks and Rec and what this year has looked like with the pandemic. This first report, I believe most of the reports, this does not include Ed Davis Learning Center. That particular venue is solely funded by the city with some minimal program receipts. So
they included after this. She did give us numbers.
Yeah. So this particular one doesn't.
Hey, David. I also thought, Stacy, it was handy that she did give us at least graph lines to show expenses, and they really managed expenses. It looks like.
Yes, absolutely. They have. You can definitely see that. So as you can see on the left, the March to June, you can see drastically the income has dropped nearly 500,000 from 2019 numbers from March to June. And when you're looking at July to September, it's actually dropped nearly 800,000 on their income levels. Keeping in mind that the city made an adjustment, an increase to Parks and Rec's budget allocation from us, but I don't believe the county made the same adjustment, if I'm correct. So
in fact, they're going to wait, Stacy, until I've been assured that they intend to match what the city added for Parks and Recreation. However, they have not done so, and the court still has to vote on that at mid-year.
Yes. And then, yes, as the mayor indicated, the orange lines representing the expenses, and you can see where those have landed. For March to June, obviously, they were already in a budget year, not as much time to react to the pandemic in March to June timeframe. So their expenses were higher than their revenues for that time period. In the July to September, in the new budget year, they had more time to react in preparing the budget and were able to greatly decrease their expenses to be more in line with the current revenue situation.
Actually, these are pretty severe. How do they track with what steps council took with the increased budget allocation? These look like they could be worse than we anticipated.
I would need to look at her program revenues, definitely participation revenues, and see. I know with council action, let me pull that up on my screen so I can have it. Give me one moment, and I can indicate what we did.
I was thinking if my memory's not reliable, but I was thinking we added somewhere in the range of $175,000.
That sounds about right. Our budget for parks this year was $1,098,711. Again, that is excluding Ed Davis. It has its own budgetary line item that excludes any specific capital items that we gave them. So operating expenses for Parks and Rec, we gave them $1,098,000 this year. And last year, it was $924,000. So you're very correct. Yes, about $175,000 additional that we have given them. So obviously their revenues are down greatly. And we have helped buffer that to some extent. And on the July to September, the income is 776 and the expenses are 672. So they are obviously managing what they've been given and what they're dealing with this first quarter, but they had such a loss from March to June that they're having to recover from, and they don't have significant reserves. They have minimal, if any, reserves to help buffer what happened in the March to June timeframe. We'll go on down to the next one. So as you can see here, this information represents revenue generating activities only. So this is not revenue from the county and the city or any other grants or such that they may receive. This will be program revenue generating activities. Again, does not include Ed Davis in this particular graph. For March to June, you can see that in a normal year, they're around 500,000. And I believe that says it was 51 or yeah, 51,765. And for July to September, it's usually around 300,000 and it's down to 125. So they've been hit hard and have not even come close to fully recovering. The next is pavilion participation numbers. And you can see the 3 different years. The blue is 2018, the orange is 2019, the gray is 2020, and then the actual numbers that correspond with that above. And you can see from March to September, obviously April and May, they were completely shut down. They had no participation numbers at the pavilion at all. They have slowly increased that, but are obviously still not up to a normal year. So we are still seeing decreased participation. I would assume mostly due to the pandemic, but there could be a loss of memberships as well due to the new gym that's in town. So
Though I'm actually surprised to see it's short term, but I'm surprised to see the trend line for 2020.
Yes.
I was afraid it would be even more of a broken line since track back over from the goose eggs. I wouldn't have thought we'd had such a linear trend that way.
Yes, and I haven't obviously talked to Kimberly specifically about why, but I would imagine that people who have memberships are probably coming back in to use the facility in growing numbers. Some of their programming is probably still quite reduced, but I would say the membership activity that comes in for the exercise facilities is probably slowly increasing, would be my assumption.
Well, that graph line there is a little bit more promising than you would have thought. So that's pleasing in itself. I know that there's probably some that are going to want to try to, take the Parks and Rec down more than, we really want to. And I feel like that we have an opportunity to maybe see how they're going to go in this last quarter to the end of the year, because I feel like they're generally coming back better, don't you, Mayor David?
I'm sorry.
I think we really need that a quarter, Connie. You're right. This isn't a very pretty picture overall that Kim has provided for us, but that very bottom trend line on usage at the pavilion gives me some hope.
Yeah.
That the picture could improve as long as we don't go backwards with the virus stuff during cold weather. But
Right.
right now, that is a more promising trend line than I thought we'd see. Even though it's going to be interesting for Stacy I think that these results are even worse than we expected when we made the additional budget allocation.
Yes. The revenue generating activities, I'm just going to scroll back up, but they are quite drastic.
Yes.
And that's the one thing maybe I can get some clarification from Kim on is even though our participation trend line is up, are those participation numbers revenue generating activities? If they're memberships that have just not gone away, but people are finally coming back, it may not be an increased revenue situation, is it? That's kind of where I'll have to get some clarification from her.
Well, I think one reason we wanted to monitor it as closely as we could, because we hoped we get some relief.
Right.
The action we had to take. Now I realize that we need a little more explanation or detail that you're going to get us, and we also need to look at another quarter.
Yes.
And
then just,
We have to give.
I'm sorry, Connie.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steph.
oh, no, you're fine.
I said we just have to give them time. I mean, if we don't give them time, you're basically talking about getting rid of our pavilion, and then we're going to have an empty facility just sitting there, And I don't want to see that happen.
No.
So I just really feel like we just need to give them this extra quarter. And the other question I would like to know from Ms. Rice is, what are the plans in this next quarter for this revenue generating activities? Are they looking for that to be more progressive? And maybe Stacy can get that for us.
Yes, and I'm happy to get that information. We do have Kim on standby. I don't know. I know I believe we have about an hour for our meeting today, so I'm not sure if we want to bring her in, but I can ask her both of those questions about participation.
Yeah, and I can email her.
Yeah, participation and how it correlates to revenue generating activity,
The income.
plans for the next quarter.
Hey, Stacy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, guys, sorry about that. I've been listening in, and I guess one of the things I may have mentioned in my email, and I guess I don't know if you all have talked about this yet, but obviously COVID had, a huge impact. But what about Planet Fitness? I mean, I know that they've had a negative impact on some of the other facilities here in town. And I guess one of my concerns is that's going to be maybe a little bit longer lasting impact
Right.
on the pavilion.
I will ask that question to Kimberly, if she's able to separate out maybe memberships lost due to Planet Fitness versus memberships that could have been lost due to people not being able to come during the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
ask her if-
Anecdotally, I think that is a big deal. I think we're going to find that they've had a real impact. We expected them to have a big impact, and I think they have. Stacy, have these numbers been shared? I know we still have to look at Ed Davis, but have these general numbers for Parks and Rec, do you know if they've been shared with the county yet?
I do not know. I specifically requested this information from
Right.
Kim for this meeting. So she prepared this just for me. So I will find out if she's shared it with the county, and if not, maybe we can ask her to, or we can share it on her behalf.
Well, it's information the county's needs to have, but they're not going to like. I can see why Kim wouldn't rush to share it, but Joe Pat needs to be brought into this loop.
Okay. Yes. I'll ask if she
Just
shared it.
Thing.
She
Okay.
had.
I just want to make this statement because I understand where David's coming from as far as other gyms go. The pavilion does have that facility provided for members, but the pavilion also has other things that the Planet Fitness doesn't have, nor Elite. They're just an exercise facility, whereas the pavilion's not. So if Kim Rice can get a little bit more creative as we move forward and stay open, that she can bring this income revenue up a little bit more. And I don't have the answers to that. I just think that it's an idea. And, but that's kind of like where I'm going with it, and see the last quarter of this year and see if they can't be a little creative with it.
I have an update. I think Kim is watching live on YouTube. So she has sent me a few texts. She's been listening to your questions. So she just wanted to share that she said they're still picking up on programs. Limited capacity limits the ability and size of the programs. They have given $43,077 in refunds due to COVID. I would assume that's related to memberships. The information has not been shared with the county yet. Like I said, I figured that was the case because she prepared it specifically for me.
Mhm.
And then just reminding that they're a recreation center, so that probably speaks a little bit to your comment there, Connie. And then they do offer more than the fitness, so I'm sure they'll look at some of those ways to do that. So if she has anything else to share later via email, I'll forward that along. But like I said, she's listening along and watching, so she texted me a few things there.
Stacy and Connie, I think, given my experience long-term with Parks and Rec and the pavilion, is that there's always been a little bit of a tension between how much money should be spent on marketing, since it's a government-owned facility and a government-operated facility. We're neither fish nor fowl. We're not a completely commercial establishment, but we compete with commercial establishments. And I think the staff has always been willing and wanted to do more marketing about our facilities, both to drive up memberships and usage. But I think we and the board have been a little hesitant to market it as hard as we would have if we owned it as a private establishment, just because it's government. So I think staff has been kind of caught between those forces a little bit. And to really drive up usage is going to require that we drive up marketing. And I think Kim's probably watching, nodding her head.
I'm nodding mine as well.
No, good.
We'll take a quick, I'm sorry, go ahead, Connie.
No, you're fine. Please.
We'll take a quick look at Ed Davis. Of course, it does not have quite the same factors as the rest of the Parks and Rec programs and facilities. You can see March to June income and expenses. Again, this is pretty much funded by the city. So you can see the expenses obviously went down drastically from March to June, probably due to loss of programs, staff, perhaps temporary programming staff not being able to work. And then July to September, you can kind of see our expenses staying steady across the years, and then the income could be a timing of just when their contributions arrived. But and then the last sheet, Ed Davis Learning Centers participation. You can kind of see where they are. It's a little more, not as much of consistency here. Obviously, it's kind of, they had the same April and May shut down, but we're not seeing the participation numbers we saw a couple of years ago, even for
It's not-
2019.
It's not the same trend line it's not the same trend line that we were just talking about it being one of our positives
Right.
in terms of
Kimberly did just in response to our last conversation, said they do not currently have a marketing manager due to budget cuts. They're hoping to plan their marketing manager back in December.
Yeah, that's a real catch-22. We reduce expenses because we absolutely have to, but that impacts our ability to market the facility and get revenue. That's the constant tension that there's been. So I'm glad to know that Kim verified that.
Yeah, and then she mentioned summer programs impact the Ed Davis numbers quite a bit, not being able to have those summer programs. If there's any other questions about Parks and Rec, if you don't have any right now, if you think of any later, please feel free to email me and I'll send those to Kimberly and we can get those answered. But unless you all have any other comments or questions right now, we will move on to kind of the bigger picture look at the city's revenues and receipts over these last couple of periods.
I only have one thing to say about this information that we've gotten is that I feel like that we're duly doing what we said that we were going to do, and that Kim Rice has done exceptionally well giving us this information. And, it's kind of like hurry up and wait. And, we all have to wait, and there's not anything any of us can do about that. But I feel like she's done an exceptional job to bring us to where we're at. And you really don't want to market to bring anything in right now because we really don't know what's going to happen, so that's why we need this last quarter. So I just want to commend her, tell her good job, and we'll see what the next quarter does for us. That's how I feel about it.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to move on and show a couple of things. The first one is, there it is. Hold on. Gotta get my right screen up. Looks like I.
David, how come you're on here twice? How come we get to see you twice?
Well, I was driving here, so I did it on my telephone, and then once I got to the house, I've got the computer going now. So.
Oh, okay.
And then I can't see some of the slides or the graphs on my phone very well. So.
Oh, okay. I just was curious.
Yeah. I've done that
Double
during
it up.
meetings. I need
Yeah.
2 monitors.
Okay.
Now I'm sharing the quarterly revenue report that I share with council every quarter with our major revenue categories. And unfortunately, as it always is with the first quarter of the year, we get a good look at how we ended 2020, but all of the revenues are not yet in for the first quarter. They won't be in until I think the end of the month. So I was planning on doing my quarterly revenue update on Monday. So right now I can still do that, or I may push it off to that first November meeting. Since October 31st is when alcoholic beverage returns are due, insurance premium taxes are due. I believe the 1st October transfer from Revenue Commission, it's coming in this week, but it hasn't come in yet. So I'm missing that information. And that's
That
where
would
the September.
be a much more complete and meaningful report if you waited and had that data.
Yes, I believe so as well. So I think I may take that off the agenda. It's one of those, got to remember, I got to wait till the first meeting after the reports are due to put it on there. So payroll tax collections. I have gone through and updated my report, obviously fiscal year 2020. We ended as of right now with about 12,540,668. And I'm going back to look at our budget. I believe we had lowered that. Let me look. We had budgeted 12,500,000 for payroll tax revenues for fiscal year 2020. So with this, we budget. We hit our budget, and I think May was probably the 3 pay period month. And then with the lag of receipts coming in, right now, June's at 918. That could go up a little more since some people are late filing returns. And you can actually see for the first 2 months of the year, for all, July and August, as of right now, we're 55,000 ahead of where we were last year. So I do think here in the next few weeks, we probably do want to talk about adjusting some of our revenue numbers, and you'll see that as we look at these other trends. And again, with the incentive, they're taking a flat 120,000 a month, as we had discussed previously. So our total incentive for this fiscal year will be 1.2 million, because they usually skip February and March. Our payroll actually held up quite well, even though April was down, which was kind of the month we knew would be down, because that's when everything was shut down for a while. The previous months and then in the last couple of months were down from last year still. We just happened to budget lower for 2020. So we bet our budget, but we are down from 2019 for 2020.
And these numbers remain very robust, not entirely because of one employer, but
Yes.
steadiness and
Yes.
is being provided by one employer maintaining their protocols and their discipline and being able to stay open.
Yes.
And that this is reflected.
Mayor, I'm really pleased to see this.
Yeah. It gives us hope that it's showing us that, at Stacy's point, was exactly what we hoped, that we could have some information over several months and be able to realistically restate our expectations for payroll collections through the rest of the year. And then all that becomes a part of the process of getting the budget balanced so we can address the other issues. So this is encouraging, and it does put us toward a restatement of estimated revenues, I think.
Mayor, kind of like you were
Agreed.
saying and Connie was saying about the pavilion, I kind of think the next few months are going to be pretty strong indicators for this category as well.
I'm going to net profits. Let me know when that screen pops up for you all.
Got it.
Okay. Net profits, we can look at for 2020. Let me see what we budgeted there. I know we either budgeted 1.5 or 1.8, but I'm going to pull it up real quick. We budgeted 1.8 million for 2020 net profits. And so this is an estimate that we would hit our budget. The one number that is out there that I don't have until the Revenue Commission completes their audit. If you look up here in this screen with all these numbers, it's this number I'm highlighting right here in gray. This 1,163,612. That was our net profits overpayments or refunds owed as of June 30, 2019. I have made an assumption in this spreadsheet that we will have refunds at June 30, 2020 of a similar amount. It could be more, it could be less. But right now, just so that we can look at a more accurate picture, I'm anticipating having this, obviously the biggest chunk of that's Toyota. But making the assumption that we'll still have those refunds owed at June 30, 2020. As long as those are similar, we've hit our budget for net profits. And then you can kind of see 2021. I think there's still probably a little bit of a lag in tax returns coming in with extensions being filed and deadlines changing. We did have a little more in July than we did last year, with that new due date being July 15th instead of April 15th, but it didn't quite pick up everything. But
So Stacy, we met our budget expectation is what this shows, but it didn't. But this is our final amended budget, correct? Did we lower through the process of several?
No, we did not lower it.
We never did.
This was our original budget was 1.8, which is lower than what we budgeted in recent years. We had been budgeting more, so dropping it to 1.8 was us being a little more conservative. And just a reminder, obviously, 2020 numbers, these are 2019 tax returns. 2019 was a normal year. The 2020 returns that will be due April 15th or later, depending on their end of year, that's where I would expect us to see that impact. Again, typically we collect around 2.5, maybe close to 3 million in a good year from everybody who's not Toyota. And then those refunds that we owe at the end of the year obviously reduce that down. If it wasn't for the refunds, this number would be 2.9. So
God have been pointing this out, and I think I've mentioned it to the council that we're maintaining payroll taxes pretty strongly, but we're not going to maintain net profits taxes. I don't believe, and we really won't see the impact of that until later this year.
yes.
We're living off last year's business cycle right now.
Yes. And I want to show you something I did on 2021, which was to keep things comparable. But when we take the refunds off in June, we kind of kick the can down the road, so to speak. We take the refunds off in June, we move the revenue to July, thinking, okay, hopefully we will earn that revenue in the next year. That's how the spreadsheet works. So to show it comparable to last July, I went ahead and did that, but I did come back on June 2021 just to net. So our true receipts for net profits for 2021 so far are only 108,000. So that's this bottom line here on cell H21 that we have collected 108,000. And again, this is where we would see the deficits, I believe, for our revenues, because we all know our businesses have been impacted. So this one's a little bit of a wait and see on it. And unfortunately, we won't know until after January and really closer to April what it will look like. So, insurance premium, again, first quarters, we can look at our 2020 number. We ended with 3.3 million. I believe that's pretty close to what we budgeted, maybe a little more. And of course, first, we budgeted 3 million for insurance premium tax in 2020. So we came in above budget at 3.3. These revenues have continued to stay strong. Again, the more homes we have, the more businesses we have, the more policies are obviously being sold in Georgetown. So you can see that. And then, of course, first quarter data is not in because the returns aren't due till October 31st. So
That's awesome, Stacy.
That is awesome. Any chance that'll flatten, Stacy, as we move forward, given the insurance discounts that were offered during the shutdown? And
well, it does. I'll have to look at that. Obviously, we'll know here in another week or so too. But I know a lot of the refunds seem to have been given in that June timeframe. So I thought June would be down, the April to June quarter, because it seemed, I believe I got my refund check from my insurance company in June. So I kind of thought that is when it would happen. I guess it's possible some of those refunds and rebates would linger over to the first quarter of this year. So we'll see more about that in a week or two. But I don't know if the rest of you, just like you said, anecdotally, I don't know if your companies gave rebates and the timing of when those might have been. I believe mine was in June. So we will see here in a few days. Property taxes. Obviously, this is our most stable income, even though it's not our highest. So we ended fiscal year 2020 with 1.9 million. And of course, fiscal year 2021 with delinquent taxes from past years. Obviously, our bills will go out after the tax rate is approved. And obviously, I wouldn't expect to see any decrease in property taxes other than if people are having hardships, they may pay their bills late this year. That would be the only factor I could see happening potentially.
Yeah, and Connie and David would probably be seeing that in their business before we would see it in those results. And I don't think people are seeing that yet, Connie.
Mm-hmm. No, not yet.
Stacy, did you say what we budgeted for 19?
For property tax, not yet. Can pull that up. As I look this up, just a reminder that we budgeted $1,780,000 for property taxes. So I think we may have been a little bit off on what we thought our 4%, or we did take the 4% last year. So we may have been off a little on that projection on what that 4% would generate. And of course, we didn't pass the 4% until after the budget had already been adopted. So we did not go back and amend the property tax revenue budget after we had took the 4% increase. So.
Although that 4% increase probably amounted to somewhere around $35,000.
Could have, yes. So.
And I also know that the sheriff's office has not mailed those property tax bills yet. They're not going to do it until the 1st of November.
Yes. So property taxes holding steady. Again, obviously, when we did our budget this year, we reduced several revenue categories. So payroll taxes is not the only one that we'll need to look at when we go back and revise. We're going to feel confident that we can increase our property tax budget with an amendment. Net profits may actually need to be decreased. We'll have to look at that. And then some of these others that we tweaked 5, 10, 15%, we may be able to see some gains in those categories as well if we choose to redo those amendments. And then alcohol, my friend who works for one of the big distributors was not wrong. People were drowning their sorrows during COVID. Alcohol revenue for the last half of fiscal year 2020 was up. January to March and April to June were both up quite a bit. So.
Yeah, folks drink when they're happy and they drink when they're sad. It's a pretty steady business.
That was the one revenue category that when we prepared the 2021 budget, we actually increased our budget. We had budgeted $1,050,000 in 2020, and for 2021 we budgeted 1.1 million, 1,100,000. So her advice clearly came through. Alcohol revenues are not down; they are increasing. I'm going to stop the share on this. I did one more spreadsheet. I liked what Kimberly had done with her graphs, and I tried to do some, but ours don't quite show the same. It's good that they don't show the same trends, but I'm not sure how useful the graphs are because of that, but I will show you.
I like the graphs.
So our graphs are much more positive. So these graphs, what I did, these are receipts. So I did not move the money back to the month it belonged to. So, if an insurance premium tax return, if we receive that money August 1st, but it belongs to June, I did not move the money back to June. These receipts are strictly based on money coming in and the day it was deposited into the bank.
This is cash.
Cash basis, and this includes all funds. I took out revenue categories that I didn't feel reflected economic, but this does include sanitation fees. It does include our cemetery sales and services, and everything like that. I'm just making sure. So this would include building permits, all the categories we just discussed: property tax, net profits, ABC fees, insurance premium. So oddly enough, from March to October, the actual flat receipts are actually up as a whole. Now, again, when I present my other report to council, I have moved everything to the period it belongs to. This is straight cash receipts. Like I said, so.
So what was the big spike in August?
Probably insurance premium taxes. Probably the timing. That would be the one I would need to look at. I removed, for example, we had received our first CARES Act funding. I removed that before I did this report because I knew that was a one-time revenue, not reflective of how our economy is doing. So I removed those kind of receipts. I'm switching screens here to go over to my detail. But like I said, I literally have just exported. Like I said, it could obviously be some of it with just the timing of when the deposits hit. There's not any one big item.
It was just a curiosity question for me.
Yeah, I know it is odd, and like I said, that's why I said it doesn't show the best picture. I was working with this yesterday, trying to see if I could do some graphs and trend lines that would help us see the bigger picture, like Kimberly did. But I think it's a little harder to see because it looks like we did have a big transfer with the Revenue Commission. It's a bigger transfer for net profits than we normally see. Again, that's a factor of the due date changing to July 15th for tax returns. So that was up higher than what it normally would have been. Lots of little things, but not. And then again, some more net profits and maybe a little higher than what we would normally see in July.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I said. I'm not sure how I don't know if I'll share these with council or not. I was trying to see it's a little bit of a up and down picture. The spikes coming at different times. I think it could just be a delay of receipts because, as you can see, for 2019, the June receipts were really high.
Mm-hmm.
And this time the August receipts were really high. So I think a lot of it could just be timing and people filing returns late. I think that's most likely the issue. I'd say some of those August receipts came in earlier in previous years.
I think those are reasonable assumptions.
Yeah, if June of 19 and August of 2020 were not such high spikes, the lines would follow each other a little bit closer. So I think that's probably what it was.
Connie and David, is from looking at this, it seems like all the way through we're getting good data, but we're realizing we need another quarter's worth.
That's kind of the way I see it too, Mayor. I mean, this is very encouraging, but you still worry about the next quarter.
Yeah.
I agree. But it is promising. It is hopeful.
Absolutely. Compared to those original conversations, we were having when we really, didn't know.
Yeah. And I think depending on what the finance committee and mayor, what you want, I know typically we bring our mid-year budget amendment in February because we do wait until, the quarter ending December, the returns are due January 31st, but we can talk about the timing of when you want that budget amendment. I don't know if you'll want it earlier or not, or if you'll want to wait until all those receipts have come in. But that's something for us to be thinking about, is when do we want to potentially revise our budget and revise these revenue projections. So.
Yeah, and we'll be doing that activity more than likely with whatever the new council looks like.
For sure.
Okay. But I think right now, Connie, you said it earlier, I think we're remaining true to our promise. And we're in general a bit encouraged. We know the places that we have to continue to monitor real closely, and we really need another quarter to have a more certain conversation.
Exactly.
So what do the committee members think about what is our responsibility to the council in terms of
Information
and sharing of information, and our belief that this is better than we thought in some places. It's concerned in some places, but we need another quarter's worth of data.
Well, that generally, Mayor, that is exactly right. And I think we don't really have to show the graphs, but Stacy can come out and show the information that we have that she showed us, except for this last one, the actual receipts, that, it's hopeful and that we need another quarter. We need that last quarter to really determine where we're at. And hopefully after November the 3rd, and we graciously get back on, we can have a finance meeting in the middle of November, because everything comes in the end of October, right, Stacy?
Yeah, for the two, yes, for insurance is the biggest one, insurance and alcohol. And then revenue commissions, obviously we're waiting on that too.
What do you think, David?
I hit a button and I can't see you all any longer.
We
Andrew,
see you
If you're on your computer, I think
at
I'm
the
giving
top.
you, but you can just X out at the top and that screen blocking us will go away.
exit out the top. Well,
First time I did that, I was
let me
afraid
share
I
my
was-
thoughts before. I'll share my thoughts before I maybe potentially cut myself off here. I think this is really good news. It's definitely optimistic, maybe cautiously optimistic. And I know we look more at revenue than we do at expenses. It's not like we're lining all these things up right now. So, Mayor, I honestly think that maybe at the next meeting, if you're up to it, if you agree, that maybe you give the council a bit of good news, and share with them, kind of what we're seeing, right now, although it's a bit preliminary. I'd hate for another council member to accuse us of not being totally transparent. I know this is a very public and meeting that we're on right now, and it's open access to anybody. But that's my thought, Mayor. What are your thoughts?
I think we have the information and we should share it.
Okay.
And I think it's reasonable to share the information and acknowledge that we need another quarter's worth of data before we start making policy recommendations.
Right.
And see if the council concurs with that.
Okay.
I'm reading that some council members are promoting this idea of budget workshops. We have those every year. It's a part of our budget process and it's established in the budget ordinance. But I find it interesting that some incumbents think that would be a good practice for us to start.
Well, the only real budget workshop that I remember is when I first got on council and when the economy tanked, that we went through that budget line up online. Remember that, David? And had to make some serious cuts.
Yes.
It was very difficult. But
And-
since then, we've grown. And we have stability in our finance person, and it's open to anybody and everybody. And they can look at it and have questions. They can email Stacy. Is that not a correct statement?
Yeah, actually, we our budget process every year includes budget workshops, and
Right.
council members are free to question any line item in the budget.
Right.
The change, Connie, there was a previous mayor who chose to give the council line item veto authority over the budget. And you all went through excruciatingly long meetings where you went line item by line item and debated it and went thumbs up or thumbs down if it stayed in the budget. That is not the way state law is written. Council does not have line item veto authority over our budget. It is my job to present a budget in total to the council. And then it is the council's responsibility to vote it up or down exactly as it's presented. They can understand it. They can ask all the questions in the world, but only if the budget that the mayor presents is voted down does it then fall to the council to reconstruct that budget. But the practice that was followed before gave away the authority of the mayor's office. It actually was not following state law. And we, as the finance committee, has always encouraged input. Some council members have chosen to have zero participation in the budget process, yet today call for us to provide a process that allows them to be involved. It's just election time, Connie. We've done every bit of this, and we do it every year.
And I think you all have done a great job. Stacy does a great job keeping our numbers and presenting them to us. So thank you, Stacy. Anytime I've ever had a question about anything, she's always been ready and willing to give me that information. So.
And always, as the mayor said, we present the budget 2 weeks before we bring it for first reading, at least. So there's
Right.
always a 2 or 3 week time window for council to ask questions about the budget. Now, not very often do we get them, but there's always time for them to ask questions before the budget ordinance is presented for first reading.
And they also have the opportunity to talk to the other directors.
When there's no communication with the directors, with the finance director in particular, with my office, with the other members of the finance committee, there's little room for complaining about not being involved in the process.
Can we, let's see here. Sorry about that, guys. Should we put this as a line item for the next council meeting then, Mayor, for you to give a brief update?
I think we can do it either as I'll let Andrew opine, but we could either do it under mayor's comments, or we could do a broader financial report, Andrew.
Well, Stacy has the quarterly financial update in the agenda, right?
Yes, but I was talking about, that was what we were talking about at the beginning of the meeting, is should I move that to the 1st November meeting, because our receipts for the first quarter don't come in. They aren't due till October 31st.
Then yes, you would need to put it in there as some indication that you're gonna give a council the update.
Yeah, maybe
Well,
maybe a mayor's comment that it's coming at the next meeting with just a highlight.
Because it's not just gonna be necessarily a mayor's comment, it's gonna spark discussion likely. So I would include it in there, and well, Devin and I will come up with some kind of language, but if you're.
Andrew, it can just be a financial update. It doesn't have to be a quarterly financial update. And we will hold the formal quarterly financial update to a subsequent meeting. But I think we give them a financial update now because it's what our commitment was. And we give them a little piece of good news. And Stacy, that gives you the opportunity. It doesn't have to be a complete quarterly report. And
Okay.
we can pick the data that would be the most meaningful for the council right now.
Okay. Okay.
So,
And then saying that, Mayor, I'm
Pardon?
sorry, I didn't interrupt.
Go
I
ahead.
apologize. I was just going to ask, is there a way that we could also give the update on the pavilion as well? Parks and Rec?
I think it was incumbent upon me to let the council know that we are tracking that, and it is a challenging picture.
Okay,
And
perfect.
we've got the data. I think I need to start letting them know that, yes, we're looking at it, and it's not as pretty as we even hoped it would be. I don't know how deeply I'll go into Kim's charts, but I think they need to have the general understanding. We can cover up, folks, with so much data that we lose our point of what we're trying to get across. And I think I can tell them about Parks and Rec.
I think just bringing them update that we are monitoring it like we promised, and it, like everything else, we need that last quarter to really make a determining decision,
Yeah, we're on the same.
right? Yeah.
Okay. Stacy, what else you got? Because I got a whole list of things, but I was really being disciplined and not taking up all your time before you got started.
Now I'm finished, and like you said, since we don't have full first quarter data, I'll really focus on how we ended 2020 on Monday, with a little preview to what will be coming up at the next meeting.
I think that's what the committee has in mind.
Yeah.
Good. An issue that will come to the council before long, I believe, if things play out the way they are. David, I really appreciated your email, text. I haven't gotten a chance to respond to it yet. The incident, the traffic stop incident over the weekend that got so much social media attention is going to cause the sheriff to go to the fiscal court and ask that they immediately fund a body cam program for the sheriff's department. In this particular case of this traffic incident that happened over the weekend, a vendor had been working with the sheriff's department on body cameras, and the vendor had given them 3 or 4 just to try out, to demo. And it turns out, by chance, the traffic stop that night that became so controversial was recorded with the body cam. And it was very helpful in this situation. So the sheriff is determined to move ahead with funding that. We had a prior understanding between the city and the county that we would wait and do body cams together because we have a funding problem. I have promised Chief Bossy, and I've said it to you all, that we've committed to fund personnel before we fund that very expensive technology. So it was going to be a more comfortable approach when the city police and the sheriff's office were doing that in the same way. I believe what's going to happen is we're going to very quickly diverge, and they're going to fund those. And we will be asked why we're not. I think our position is defensible, but as a finance committee, I wanted you to be aware that this is going to come to our plate quicker than we thought it would. So that's something we can't control, but I think it will put some pressure on us.
Mayor, that's okay. It's something we're going to have to deal with sooner or later. So, I mean, looking down the road, I think we have a pretty good plan, pretty good strategy in place for dealing with our financial situation. So I don't mind to talk about that issue really at any time.
Yeah,
Good.
me too.
And I feel the same way, and you all need to know that Chief Bossy is in no way opposed to body cameras. He just feels like he's made a commitment to his people before we buy technology. So I think our position is very defensible.
Yes.
But wanted you to be aware that we're going to be asked to explain it.
Okay.
Let's see. Body cameras. I want the finance committee to be aware that that we are working very carefully to address our required legal responses to the landfill lawsuit, where suit has been filed against the county and Judge Covington and Planning and Zoning and Joe Kane and the city and me. And we're trying to be very careful in how we respond and respond in a timely fashion. We have still not resolved the issue of coverage. We explored that yesterday internally. I have talked with the president of Collins and Company, and yesterday I talked with the head of KLC's insurance program. And I want the finance committee to know that we are legally protecting the city and me, but at this point we are doing it out of our own pocket. We have not been assigned counsel by our insurance carrier. So we are working very firmly to try and resolve that coverage question. But we are representing ourselves, and we're trying to resolve this issue with our carrier.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I know it's a tough situation, but I appreciate your work on it. I know Andrew and Devin, appreciate them as well.
Thank you.
Ditto.
And then look forward to Monday. The Finance Committee has a very important ordinance on the agenda, which will be second reading and the roll call vote for the property tax rate. Andrew, I might want to work with you and Devin to make sure that we understand all of the different parliamentary things that we may need to understand if there are amendments or other ordinances introduced, and that we're prepared to handle those in a professional way for the council.
Mayor, Andrew, now this is a timely vote, right? That's got to be done at a certain specific time in order for that increase to happen. Is that correct?
It's
Okay.
even more than that. Yeah, we have to follow the statutory guidelines in order to take that 4% rate. But more than that, we're gonna start running up against the statutory deadline for getting a rate set, period, regardless of what the rate is, because there's taxpayers have the right to get a discount if they pay it early enough. And like you said, the sheriff's got to get the tax bills out. And if we wait, I don't know, I don't have an exact date, but if we wait too much longer, we're going to bump up against those deadlines as well.
Well, I know normally they're out in October, because if you pay them by the 1st of November, you get like a 2% discount all the way through December, so I get that. I just wanted to ask that question, but yeah, I think we're going to miss that 2% unless they move it up.
I think we'll probably be bound to honor that in some way, but
Okay.
I don't think we're going to miss that deadline. I'm not 100% certain, but
Okay.
we
But we-
will.
Well, I called the sheriff's office and they said that they are not going out to the 1st of November.
Right.
So.
I think for
County tax.
bills to be painted, printed, and go out, both the sheriff's bills and Tracy's bills for the strictly city tax. We're out of time.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a good time, but we're out of time. So, it's the time.
And it'll be instructive to see how that experience goes.
Hey, Mayor, just maybe a point of clarification while we're all on here together. And I did ask Stacy this question just to make sure that I understood it right. But right now our rate is at essentially $64 on a $100,000 home or a $100,000 assessment. And the proposal is to go to $65. So I mean, essentially a dollar increase for every $100,000. Is that still the correct assumption? Okay.
That is absolutely correct, David. The rest of that calculation, just so you have the bookends on either end of how this could go, the compensating rate would be 6.3. So we have the option of further reducing the property tax, but that seems so counterintuitive when our property tax rate is so low now, and we have such a disproportionate reliance on payroll tax.
Yeah.
So that you have it front, you understand it exactly, and if we go from 6.4 to 6.5, we gain $32,000 worth of annual revenue.
Yeah.
And if someone suggests that we actually reduce it to 6.3 cents, we lose $32,000 worth of revenue.
Okay, Mayor, while I'm thinking about what was the cost? Do we know the cost of the body cam system for the police department by any chance?
I'm going to get
Million?
I'll get some rough numbers, David. I think the initial cost is not huge. I think the initial cost to put body cams on all of our officers is probably $150,000. It is a big number, but it is not an impossible number. Where the number does get impossible for us is the very rigid storage requirements for that data. If we're going to collect that data digitally and on cameras, we are legally required to store it and archive it and be able to access it for a long period of time. If we lose it, mess it up, can't produce it, we're liable. It would absolutely require from day one another position to download, store, and manage that data in a way that would be responsive to the court system.
Exactly.
That is a dedicated position.
The ongoing cost and the growing storage cost, eventually we're going to have to do all this, and we should. But we just got to be able to fund our personnel needs and other needs within the city before we do this.
Yeah. Is this something that we could do collaboratively with the county, or is this something that we need to be on our own?
Well, David, I guess it's potentially that we could. They are such different departments managed entirely differently. And I don't say that as a judgmental thing. It's just legally, the sheriff is a constitutionally elected office, and he is responsible for all the policy within his office.
Yeah.
The fiscal court is involved only that they write the check and fund it. They do not make any decisions for the sheriff.
Okay.
Ours, the police department, is totally answerable to me personnel wise and the council policy wise. Okay. So it'd be really hard to merge that structural difference and the cultural difference between the two departments. Plus, if we're simply not ready to do it, and I think they're going to make a knee-jerk reaction and do it immediately.
Exactly. The knee-jerk reaction, you're exactly right, Mayor, and that's not something we need to do. Like I said, I'm with Dave. I think defensively we can defend it. And I know Chief Bossy's not opposed to them, but we have made other promises about manpower and raises that still need to be continued to look at. And I believe that that's what they want.
David, it's a good question, though, that I'll get us a ballpark figure from Chief Bossy so we can at least be conversant about it.
Okay. All right. Great.
I bet it comes in around $500,000.
The figure that I'm got in the back of my head is the fiscal court will approve something in the range of $800,000.
Oh. Okay.
But
That's a lot.
Information, and I shouldn't have even said that number, but I think it's a substantial number.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Does it
Anything
help?
else on this?
Are there any benefits from an insurance perspective? You would think there would be. I guess that's something else we can kind of look into.
Yeah, we can look into that as part of a bigger evaluation.
Right.
I'll make a
Casey's
note.
got one more item, and I think, David, I want to talk real quickly about your question on the landfill, but let's let Stacy.
I apologize, Mayor. I did forget one thing. Arlene called me yesterday. I think you were dealing with some other things. And so the Senior Citizen Center apparently made contact with us yesterday. And it seems they may have asked the county for some additional funding. And they're saying that by December, they are going to be short on their senior meals program by about 20,000. So it seems their plan is to ask each of us for 10,000. Arlene, we would have to confirm with the judge, but Arlene made it sound like the county said they would give 10 if we did. But just as a reminder,
But we're already given 15 more than the county does, and
Well-
our committee decided that was okay.
and one thing I did want to note, when we funded our community services organizations and nonprofits, we cut them all by 10%.
We did.
So we typically fund the senior citizens to the tune of $97,000. This year's budget, we put in at 87.3. So obviously the finance committee, you all can think about what you would like to do. If we were to do anything, I would say we would simply restore our 10%, but which would be 9,700. But Arlene called me about that around 4:00 yesterday, and I almost forgot to mention it, but they have made contact with the county already and then have reached out to us. I don't have a copy of a formal letter or anything. I can ask her if they sent one, but
Well, I tell you what, you talk about, how do you say no to senior meals?
Yeah.
Once a year, I go with them to deliver meals, and we take about half a day on a bus, and we ride around to people's apartments and houses, and everybody gets a hot meal and a carton of milk. And I don't know those people would ever get a hot meal if they weren't brought a hot meal. But we can't, boy, this stuff's hard. This stuff is really hard right now.
Well, that's the kind of thing for me that a slight bump in the tax rate can help offset or accommodate, Mayor. And I guess that's kind of the way I sometimes, or more recently here in life with my past experience of being on council, I was very focused on being fiscally conservative, which I have been and I still am. But I also realize there are needs, and this, to me, that's. I'm with you. I mean, how do you say no to something like that in this community? So anyway, I'm ready to deal with that issue as well.
I am too.
You will bite the bullet there, Stacy.
okay. We could, Andrew, correct me if I'm wrong, but since we won't have a budget amendment coming up for a while, would we want to prepare a municipal order just asking council do we want to just restore the 10% back to our 97,000, or do we just want to make it an even 10?
No, I think we should just restore what we took away.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
And that's so close to the 10, it'll work.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we can prepare a municipal order that indicates we want to restore that funding, and it'll be captured in a later budget amendment.
You good with that, David?
I'm good. Either way, guys. I don't want to split hairs. I just want to support it and help them out. So whatever you all think, I'll go along with.
I just think giving back what we took away initially is fair.
Okay.
And we'll catch them up on their next monthly payment after that's approved in November.
Okay.
Well, David, you and Devin and I had some back and forth on the landfill and the possibility of the closure of the landfill and how that might affect our budget. And you had asked or posed the idea of us kind of giving council our plan for dealing with that. I think that the best avenue is we, just like our earlier topic, we have the mayor sort of give them an overview of what could potentially happen, what's going to happen, and to say that we are trying to put together real numbers because we don't have that today. What we have today is what the variables are and how they can move one way or the other. I think we also have a general sense that things are going to be okay. We talked about this a little bit the other day, but we're confident based on our conversations with the other waste haulers in the area that we will, the market's not going to run away with us. It's a competitive market. There are plenty of places to send our trash in the area. We do have the fact that we are currently under an artificially deflated cost structure for disposing of our garbage based on, through December of 21, we have an artificially low tipping fee. But that is going to change regardless because that contract ends. Whether the landfill exists or not, that is going to go away. But that is when the market rates are going to kick in. And I believe that no matter what, whether we have a landfill here or a transfer station, or we send our garbage to another county, the market is going to determine what that rate is. And then we have factors like, well, we no longer have to drive to the landfill, or will we have to drive a short distance to a transfer station? We don't have any of the numbers that go along with that yet. We'll try to get them, but I think the message, if we wanted to give council assurance based on things they've read in the paper or whatever, is that we're trying to do that math, but that we preliminarily don't feel like it's going to be, it's not going to be a break the bank type of change, at least not today.
Okay.
I would rather, before we gave council any numbers, I would rather firm up those numbers and put it as part of a comprehensive formula, if you will. Does that respond to your concern?
Right. I just want us to be, and I know we are out in front of it and not be caught off guard by a question or something. And then the fact that maybe we've got a couple of options. We've got a transfer station. We've got the ability to privatize, or maybe there's even another couple options beyond that. So
there are numerous options.
Yeah.
David, I think I've gone from when this conversation first started 2 years ago or whenever it was, I was petrified that if the landfill closed, we could see solid waste cost triple.
Right.
And we had all kinds of doomsday scenarios that seemed real at the time. What I have become absolutely convinced of since then is that we're at no risk whatsoever. The market will take care of us at a rate that is competitive with where we are or better.
Okay.
And there's capacity everywhere and people wanting to give it to us. I no longer have any worry about that, David. Between Rumpke, Republic, the Rumpke transfer station, the market will protect us, and I think we're 100% safe.
That's great. That's good news, Mayor. I appreciate that.
With all of this said, I do think it is fair to say that some of those solutions are not just to flip the switch overnight. We fix it. Some of those, all of them, honestly, since we will come to the end of our contract with Waste Services of Bluegrass, no matter what, in December 2021, in terms of how much it costs for us to dispose of our garbage, it is likely that we're going to need to look at a bidding scenario, whether that's bidding the cost of disposal or bidding who's doing the disposal or where it's getting disposed of. We're gonna bump up against that sooner rather than later, and it probably ought to be thinking in those terms. So putting together those options and then what each step involves is what we're going to work on next. And it is almost a certainty that we will be bringing to you sometime early next year a plan of action. How do we move forward? And we've long talked about discussing the possibility of privatization as one of those options, but I hope that we have all that laid out neatly. Because right now, I think there's just so many things swirling around and what ifs. I think if you give us a few months, we will try to solidify that picture and deliver it to you formally.
Yeah, we're gonna have lots of options. We don't know exactly what the playing field looks like because it changes every day. Waste Services of Bluegrass right now, and their latest filing against me and the city said they'll run out of space in December of this year. So this could change immediately or not change immediately.
Yeah.
We've got good options every which way we go.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Mayor. Andrew.
Yes, sir. What else you got, Andrew?
Just check my list here. I don't have anything concrete to talk about. I think I want to say generally that we're going to be coming up on 1 year in January since we delivered our financial
Data.
presentation. Yeah. And we face the possibility of having a new set of eyes, a new council body. I mean, it's entirely possible that we have the same council, but it's also possible that we have a couple of new members, and we might start thinking about how we'll kill two birds with one stone, and how we revitalize the message and the information in that presentation, and also if there are new council members, how we educate them on the information in that report, and do we need to update that information or morph it into a different report? And I guess we should start thinking about what that might look like. It's not a today conversation. It's just we anticipate that it will come up.
Yeah.
And it goes hand in glove with I've been spending some time thinking about a new council, whether it has new members or not. It's a new term of office. Even all incumbents back in for another 2 years, it ought to be a time when we try and look at it as a time of renewal and a time to re-find our enthusiasm at the beginning of a term and recommit to some of these big things. And I think with or without new members, I think our numbers need to be updated in that study so they're still relevant. I think all the points are still relevant, but I think we might need to update some of the data to make sure of that. And I think the presentation ought to be made in detail to a full council meeting. Even the incumbents need to see it again. It's been a long time. And if we have some refreshed data, I think it needs to be a part of almost a new council orientation. And it's kind of our responsibility, I think, to generate that enthusiasm and bring a new council to a level of understanding that we need them to be at.
And Mayor, I just want to interject. Like Andrew said, January is going to be the new year, and I say sooner than later. That January is the perfect time to do that, because we're going to have all of our numbers in at the end of the quarter, and we're going to have refreshed data, and it's something that we can't put off any longer if we don't have to because of COVID, you know? So I think the sooner the better.
I think, and it's important that we, on issues this big and as time passes, that we kind of recenter our attention on it by looking at the data again. There have been a lot of statements made election related that lead me to think that a lot of people don't have as full a grasp on the city's finances as I wish they did. So I think it's our job as an administration and a finance committee to help folks have the right understanding of our finances. And there's a fair amount of misunderstanding and misinformation that we can help. We can help the dialogue by putting it back out there correctly.
Agreed.
Andrew, that's a big undertaking. You went completely underground for about a year to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have that amount of time this time. How
No.
can you and Stacy begin to update data, at least on the key findings, so that we're not presented outdated, stale information?
I don't know. That's something that Stacy and I are going to have to download on. I mean, getting the data itself is not necessarily the hard part, but restructuring all the hundreds and hundreds of charts and formulas and things like that, that's where it kind of can go awry real fast. I think we need to do an evaluation of what it is reasonable to update. Some of those things are readily identifiable trends that just one more year of data is not going to make all that much difference. But particularly things like recent changes in salaries across our peers, there's been a lot of change there lately. So that's the kind of thing that we'll focus on. And the numbers largely aren't going to change when we talk about historical perspective. So we just need to talk about what is most critical to update. And then I think we'll have a better idea of how much work is going to be involved. But I don't think we're looking at another year of data. I think that we might be talking about how this is going to morph from. I hate to just dump the same presentation on them. I think that our conversation has already shifted to partially to what is the next step. And so our conversation may be, here is a summary and overview of the data that we gave you with new information, but also here's a summary of the conversation we've started, and kind of push from there. I'm speaking in very general terms, but I think the last thing we want to do is just deliver the same report that we gave before with new data in it. But Stacy can start that right away.
I think explanation when presented the updated information is how to proceed forward as to what it encompasses and timeframes would be relevant to all council members to understand how, what would be the best way to, you know what I'm saying?
Well, we spent a lot of time in the presentation talking about just raw numbers. Here's how we compare to ourselves. Here's how we compare to others. And I think the immediate next step is something along the lines of a needs assessment, if you will.
Okay.
It's one thing to say we as a department are 15 officers short of our peers, and it's another thing for the department to say, and here is the impact of those 15 missing officers, and to to sort of validate the fact that those aren't just numbers in a vacuum. They mean something. Am I on the right track there, Mayor?
I think we've already established that. I think we've established that in spades right now.
Yeah.
I think that we can take almost as a given. I think that it's really important. Folks tend to focus on salaries, and they understand them, they can relate to them, and it's amazing. Stacy pointed this out to me, but we settled real quickly on the police department being $8,600 as an average. But what our but our recommendation was actually much more specific than that. The raises went anywhere from 5,000 to 11,000, but they averaged the 8,600. So everybody kind of gravitated to that number, which everybody said was the average. So I do think that, and then all of a sudden that became the number that everybody
Right.
accepted and worked toward. And I think that salaries are so sensitive, and the numbers become the numbers as soon as people see them. I think we need to make sure that we've benchmarked ourselves with the cities that really matter, that we lose officers and firefighters to, the ones around us, and I think we need to update all of that competitive salary information to the current moment. All the other data that represent trends and talking points, I think, are still valid. So and then we make it, if y'all will recall how we almost killed you all with boredom in a couple of meetings where we went through 100 slides with you, and we realized we couldn't expect that to be our message. So we worked on messaging for a long time and got it down to the video. We probably need to do some same thinking about how we repackage this so it is something you care about hearing about, and it's got current information, and we can especially get the attention of some folks who really and truly believe that all we have to do is want to give police more salaries and hire more of them, and we can do it if we just wanted to. That people believe that, and we could just change the budget. Listen, one of our current council members, in her Georgetown News graphic statement of what she wanted to accomplish in the coming term was, quote, "There are ways that the budget can be and should be managed that will create more revenue." That was a statement from one of our long-term council members, that if we manage the budget, we can create revenue. We have a lot of education to do. We have a lot of education to do.
Part of our task, I think, is to help council understand where in each department money is allocated, and the fact that it is allocated to expenses that aren't optional. And
Exactly.
the fact that the vast majority of most departments' budgets goes to salaries is indicative of that. But maybe there is a way we have of explaining, of highlighting those other items that explains that we're not dealing with we're not dealing with a choice of spending money on things that we want. We're dealing with these are the hard costs of operating a public works department or a police department or a fire department.
Yeah,
I haven't really wrapped my mind around that yet.
it'd be very easy, I would think. I mean, by the time you start with their expense budget, you back out salaries, benefits, debt, some of those contractual obligations, you're going to realize that what we spend on the supplies and everything else, it's minimal. It's
Yeah.
tiny,
The
Right.
tiny.
discretionary spending is, I think we could show that if you eliminated, if you took out everything else and you eliminated all the discretionary spending, whatever that might be, that you're not talking about a significant amount of money. I think that might be, we sometimes tend to take that for granted as administrators because we know that. But it might benefit us to show that in a simple and meaningful way.
I think you're right, Andrew.
You know, the one thing that stands out the most to me, and I've said that, you know, when we were looking at all this, you know, I realized that we needed to generate some additional revenue. And I said, you know, we also need to look at efficiencies and cutting costs.
Mhm.
But when you look at the fact that we went from 240 employees down to 200 employees over the past 10 years and the fastest growing community, I mean, how do you do that? I mean, that's an extreme reduction in staffing levels. And you talk about an expense, the revenue that we've saved from that is unbelievable.
And David, the fact that on a purchasing power basis, we have the same available revenue to us right now that we had 20 years ago.
Right.
Adjusted for inflation, our
Right. Right.
income same as it was 20 years ago, and this is not 20 years ago. The other thing that I thought would really help people if they would pay attention to it is the pie chart that shows we're more than 60% of our budget is to public safety.
Mhm.
And there is no other function of city government out of everything else we do that has more than 8% of the budget.
Mhm.
And that 8% is debt service, which we can't. After that, there's no other city activity or department that gets more than 7% of the budget.
Yeah.
Where should these expand?
Right.
It's good rhetoric. If you've never been around our budget, it's easy to say, well, they didn't consider cutting expenses before they added the 911 fee. Well, we just passed a budget that reduced every department's budget.
Right.
We actually did those things, but rhetoric is easy and actually doing the job is much more difficult.
Yeah. No, I agree, Mayor. I agree.
Got a lot to do.
Yes, we do. Stacy, have you got everything you need for today?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Then I will keep Connie and David, I will keep you all up to date on our landfill lawsuit situation.
Great. All right,
Yeah.
Mayor.
We will go from there. And thanks for your time today.
Thank you.